Hello, chess Neurites. Our beloved Gotham Chess is training hard to become a Grandmaster. He played some FIDE tournaments last year and early this year, and now he's planning to play few more of tournaments. So today, I'm going to share my thoughts on whether he can become a Grandmaster. Watch the video till the end to know my thoughts. And recently, he has also crossed 2900 on chess.com Blitz, which is also really good. So let's look at some of his games and try to understand his strength and weaknesses. So in this game, Gotham Chess has black pieces and he's playing against Grandmaster Sosa Thomas. So the position is quite complicated. Levy is up a pawn, but both the kings are weak. There is that pass pawn on d6. Levy has the knight on d4. So he finds a really instructive move to put pressure on Thomas. So if you want, you can pause the video here and try to find that brilliant move. So in this position, Levy played the move Queen h4. So that shows his strength. So basically, in these type of complex positions, sometimes so many things are going on that we start calculating too many complex variations, but start missing these type of candidate moves. So of course, Queen takes h4, then there is knight f3 check. So yeah, the good thing is that he's tactically alert, and this is, by the way, is the first game that he had played early last year when he was on the journey of playing quite a few tournaments. And in that game, when you're playing against a Grandmaster, and when such a situation is there, and then when you find moves like these, then it shows that you are in form. So, of course, Thomas played King h2. He did not play Queen takes h4, but Levy is fine with it. He captured this, and then he exchanged the queens, and now he's targeting this pass pawn. An advanced pass pawn, if not well defended, can be a weakness as well. And then he slowly increased the pressure. And then in this position, he exchanged the knights because it's just a matter of time before that d6 pawn will fall. And then it took a bit, but Levy went on to win the game. So that Queen h4 was a really nice touch. And yeah, so it might seem like just a tactical movement, but as I mentioned, that just shows that he is quite alert, however the position is. So now let's look at another game of his. So in this game, he is playing against Macias Pino Diego, and Levy has white pieces. Now he is down a pawn, but he has the double bishop advantage and his pieces are active. So in this position, c6 gets played. Now an extremely natural move in this position would be to just play d6 and create a protected pass pawn. But Levy was not a big fan of it because he thought that the knight would get to e6 and then it will be difficult for him to make the breakthrough. So he has the space advantage on the queen side. This bishop is also aiming at the queen side. This rook is also aiming at the queen side. But he correctly senses that he has an opportunity to do something on the king side, and he plays rook e1. This is really good. The full board awareness. You should not just look at one side of the board. Now it might seem like, but what's the point? What if black just takes this? So that's the point. Queen takes e8, rook takes e8, bishop f8, and then there is this move c6. So this is what Levy had seen. He's shifting the attention from the queen side to the king side. So his opponent played king f8. He wanted to stop any of those queen e7 ideas. Now Levy played another instructive move. He played the move queen f4. First it might seem like, okay, what's the idea? We'll see. So his opponent played f5, and then Levy played the move queen d6 check, forcing exchange of queens. But why? Because he gets an advanced pass pawn, be able to push it, might be able to play rook e7, You might be able to play d7, rook e8, depending on black's response. And now black is just lost. So rook e8 was played, d7 check, king f7, rook e7 check, king f6. Then there is d6, defending the rook, and there is bishop b2 threat. And then Levy's opponent resigned here. So when I looked at this game, when I looked at that rook e1 move, so it's not that easy, because when you have such a natural d6 move available, then you just play that. But Levy showed that he has the sense of looking at the full board, which is not an easy skill. So these are certain promising signs. Now, I will try to show some of his games where we can notice some of his shortcomings, some of his weaknesses. So let's look at this game where Levy has black pieces and he's playing against Espinosa Pedro. So things are looking great for Levy because he's up 2 pawns and he doesn't have that big weaknesses or anything like that as well. So white does not have any compensation for those 2 pawns. So in this, so from this moment onwards, he started to go slowly wrong and gave a bit too much of activity to his opponent than he should have. So I think in this position, what he should have done is he should have tried to stabilize the position and then just play. So a better move would have been just bring the queen back, centralize the queen. And if f4 is played, then play queen f6. There is some pressure over here. If king g3, king h3, then there can be rook e3 check type of ideas. And of course, on top of that, he's up 2 pawns as well. So one of the things I think that he will need to work on is his technique, how his approach of the position is once he gets close to winning or winning position. So here he played the move rook e7. Not a bad move actually. So his opponent played the move queen c3. So now in this position, he should have been a bit more alert, gone a bit more in depth in calculation, and he should have played the move bishop takes a2. Of course, rook takes a2 has this, but he might have been a bit skeptical because of this rook d8 check move. But the thing is that, yeah, it looks dangerous, but after rook d8, king f7, white is not able to do much. The important point being that if there is queen h8 or something, then there is queen e5 check. And if this pawn is lost, then also no worries because queen takes f2. And an important thing, the bishop covers this diagonal. So precise calculation in close to winning position or winning position would help him in not letting opponent get away when he has worked so hard to get such a position. So he played rook a8. He thought that, all right, let's just improve the rook's position and put more pressure on the king side. But this is a risky choice because he gave up that a3 pawn. Because if this pawn somehow gets captured, and because it is on light square, so it's not that difficult, then this pawn would become an advanced pass pawn. Now, Levy is still better, but the large part of his advantage has it disappeared, and slowly but steadily, white made a comeback, and then he managed to get away with a draw. So let's look at one more example like this. So this position is a bit more complicated than the earlier one. So Levy is black and he's playing against Bortnik Mykola. So if you look at the position, then things are looking really bad for white because this king is on f1, rooks are not connected. I mean, this bishop, there is this rook is active. Of course, Levy has to be a bit careful because there is this bishop, there is this rook, but it's not like Bortnik is able to do something that's significant. So as we saw in the previous game, if Levy had calculated accurately, then he would have taken the bishop, he takes d3. So he would have considered that in the game for sure, but he might have been a bit concerned about this idea. But then there is bishop g5, and if something like knight h3, then there is f6, and whatever activity that white has on the king side is disappearing. And please remember, Levy is up a piece. So this is an important thing that maybe if he tries to be more precise in calculation, when he has winning position, then he would not allow his opponent to get too many chances. But in this position, he played the move bishop d6. So Boateng played the move knight f4, and now in this position, Levy should have played the move queen g5, putting pressure on this knight. And even if queen h3 happens, doesn't matter. By the way, there is this mate threat. Just h6. This is hanging. This is hanging. Things are just looking bad for Boateng, and there's a really good chance that Levy would have won the game quite easily. So the point is that there are certain moments where it doesn't mean that he doesn't calculate, but somewhere he misses some of his ideas or he misses some of his opponent's candidate moves, as we'll see. So he played queen f5, opponent played rook h4, then h5 was played, bishop e2, he played bishop takes f4, but then Boateng played a really nice move, queen takes g4, because if h takes g4, then there is rook h8 mate. So then in this position, so earlier when we are seeing the position, Levy was completely winning, but now Boateng has made a comeback. But still, Levy is fighting, and then he's still better. And then he got this position where he is up a pawn. And let's get to the important part that I want to discuss, this one. So Levy is up 2 pawns, but this bishop is quite well placed. There's some possibility of some activity maybe on the king side. By the way, Levy has these connected pass pawns. So this rook is also well placed. So in this position, one of the things that we will discuss in the next game of his is that sometimes he makes the pawn moves in a bit of a rushed manner. So yeah, Levy, by any chance, if you are watching the video, and then my advice to you would be to work on your pawn play, finding the right moment to push the pawn, because we'll see in this game. Now, it's important to understand that white has no threats at all in this position, because if king takes d5, then there is rook d3 check, and if rook takes d3, then just e takes d3, and yeah, then Levy can just simply push the pass pawn. So, but in this position, he got in a bit of a panic situation and he played e3. So, not that great move. What he should have done is, since white doesn't have a threat, he can try to improve this rook's position, rook c6. What's the idea? Maybe trying to get the rook to c3, or maybe trying to get the rook to c1 and then do something, since white is not able to do much, because I've already mentioned king takes d5, not that good move because rook d3 check is coming. So, but he made this pawn move, now rook e2, and suddenly this pawn is weak. So he played knight e1, but then rook e1, knight f2, rook takes e3. So Levy is still up a pawn, but this bishop is strong, this king is active, so things are slipping of his hand. And then he played rook, so he should have just exchanged in this position and the position would be about equal, but then he played rook f4 check, and now there is king takes e5. By the way, some of you would be thinking that can't he play king e5? But if king e5 gets played, then there is rook f5 check, and then after that there is knight g4 check, and then he will get the material back. So king takes d5, but the thing is, material is equal, king is active, the bishop is active, 2 rooks are active, so things are just looking bad for Levy. And then suddenly, in span of few moves where he had a winning position, now he's actually losing. So yeah, please be a bit careful about those rushed pawn moves. Now, let's look at another game of Levy. So the last two were more focused on how his approach should be once he gets a close to winning or winning position. Here, so we are in the early middle game, that development has been completed. So now, and by the way, Levy has white pieces and he's playing against Khamrakulov. So in this, Levy should have just played something like knight e2. So what's the point? Of course, if bishop d6, then he can play bishop takes f6 and weaken black's king side. And if something like this, then yeah, that active bishop is gone. He can try to maybe double. He can try to play b4. He has a more pleasant position. But then sometimes what he does, like we saw in that last game, he makes rushed pawn decisions. f4, see. You have to remember, that pawns can't move backward. So whenever we make a pawn move, it's a responsible move. So he wanted to remove that bishop from the diagonal, but he's also weakening his king. So and then here, Kamraklo played the move c5. He's like, all right, you want to weaken my king side? That's fine. But I'll have the double bishop advantage and you're not in a situation to take advantage of my weak king side. So then Levy played the move knight c3 and then bishop f8 was played. So things are still not bad. He can maybe try to, for example, one of the things that you could try to do is he can try to maneuver his knight like this and then knight g4. Of course, not directly knight g4, otherwise it would fall, but he can basically try to slowly do something on the king side, because even though it's not easy for him to do something right now, but that pawn structure is quite weak. So, but in this position, once again, he goes for that rushed pawn move that makes his position a bit questionable, because now what happens is he's weakening his king as well by pushing the pawn. And then Kamraklo takes advantage of it by playing an extremely instructive move c4. He's ready to sacrifice the pawn because he wants to get this bishop on c5. And if it is able to go there, then now it is Levy's king that will be weak. So bishop takes b7 was played. This happened. And now, so the game goes on, but the problem what has happened is that the activity has shifted to black. So now let's look at another important moment. Still, it's not too late. I mean, if Levy plays good chess, then he should be able to draw. So now better strategy for him would have been just to play knight e2, keep the pressure on the bishop. Then black will have to play rook d8, and at some point there will be some liquidation, and I think the logical result should be a draw. But in this position, Levy is still trying to play a bit more aggressive. So it's important to understand that this is not the moment to try to do it, because then black will have too much of activity. He wants to go for the attack on the king side, but the king just goes to f8, and now attacking chances are not there. And then that bishop is really well placed on e5. That d2 pawn is under pressure. Now queen d3, that b3 pawn also gets under pressure. And then Kamraklo gets the winning position. Queen d1 gets played and improves the rook's position. And then this is just lost. So now, coming to the question, do I think that Levy can aim for the Grandmaster title? Can he become the Grandmaster? Yes, he can. Because as we saw earlier, he played that really nice move queen h4. So, and of course, the most instructive, that rook e1, trying to shift the matter on the other side of the board. So he has that awareness of the full board. But for him to become a Grandmaster, clearly he will need to work on his weaknesses. That is some rushed pawn play. And then in winning position, basically he needs to improve his technique. He needs to be more precise in calculation to not give unnecessary chances to the opponent. And of course, as we saw in this game, he needs to recognize in some moments when to be aggressive and when to be solid, and not make the weakening pawn moves, especially that weakens his king. So Levy, if you need any sort of help from my end for your journey to become a Grandmaster, I'd be glad to be a part of it, and I wish you all the best, and I hope that you will become a Grandmaster quite soon. All the best.